process right now.
And it tells me there, all right, we're good to go.
Okay. So do you think there's a Berkshire Renaissance last 10, 25 years?
Yes.
All
You
right.
know, again, I don't know. I'm trying to unpack the term as we talk about it, but uh, I think the world is catching up to what people in the Berkshires have always known about the Berkshires as a place to, as a place to live, as a place to do business, as a place to come for recreation, as a place to appreciate culture. You know, I would say that the time period that you're focusing on uh, is one where there's certainly been a North Adams Renaissance. There's
Mhm.
been the opening of Mass MoCA. There's been just a sea change in the role of MCLA, in what was North Adams State,
Mhm.
uh, as a higher ed powerhouse, and as a strong public liberal arts counterpoint to Williams and the private liberal arts side of things. I think the kind of development that has happened because of those two developments and other catalysts is part of that as well. So you've got the tourists hotel, you've got uh, we're really seeing some great things in housing development. Uh, but it's not just North Adams, it's not just the Berkshires. Um, the role of the Williamstown Theater Festival has become different and more prominent. The level of investment, and I think this is generational too in Williams over the past 20 years. From the Paresky Center, from the 62 Center, the new science complex, uh, the library. That's all part of Renaissance and revitalization as well.
Yeah. I think the reason I'm bringing this forward is I hadn't thought of it, but there was, as part of the 200th rather,
Mhm,
celebration of the Alumni Society, oldest in the country, et cetera, et cetera.
mhm.
Joe Thompson gave a talk about the origins of Mass MoCA, and he went lyrical about the Berkshire Renaissance, but I felt that his take was more purely based on his link with Tom Krenz and the Culture Corridor, Williams College Museum of Art. So it was all based on that. But was there something else that was going on? I think we could confidently talk about the multiplier effect of Mass MoCA, porches, the whole hospitality industry, that things have grown sort of in an amazing proportion and very quickly. But you had to say goodbye to Crane. And what did that displaced labor force wind up doing? And what opportunities exist for middle and lower income members of the population? So, is there a renaissance for them? What can they expect?
Well, that's a really good question. Crane is still. Well, let me just say when we talked a year ago, the fact that, or a little more than that, the fact that I was in a fight with Crane notwithstanding, um, their decision, which was framed in the context of the pandemic, I think was a decision that they would have made regardless, having
Mhm.
having exhausted the term of the tax benefit, having seen where their market was going. And I think it's a company that still has its own struggles that I don't want to litigate or focus on. But that let's start with the buildings, right? One of those buildings has been purchased by someone who plans to do large-scale indoor cannabis cultivation.
Mhm.
So that will be an economic activity generator. That will be a source of employment. There's another company that's looking at the other building to, it's a company called B&B, which is a tiny home manufacturer. They were in North Adams. They moved to a building in Adams, and now they have an expansion opportunity and are looking at North Adams. There's still there's still a disconnect, and manufacturing exists in the Berkshires, exists in North Adams, and will continue to exist, but it gets more specialized, and it's opportunity. Oh, it's number of jobs, but it's also opportunity, and some of that is skill based. So it's how do you create an education system that creates a workforce pipeline for the jobs that do exist. But I've heard Joe do a lot of different versions of the origin story of Mass Mocha, and I've been wrapped every time because it's a great story. But I think a lot of it is about that knock-on effect, or that multiplier effect, and you mentioned porches, and that's a key piece of it. But not for Mass Mocha, you wouldn't have the tourists project, because but for Mass Mocha, you wouldn't necessarily, or you most likely wouldn't have had Wilco come to town, and the connections and the relationships through Solid Sound that led to the development of tourists. And there are a lot of those stories of people coming to the Berkshires and, for lack of a better term, recruiting or engaging other people and other partners. So the folks who are doing the Greylock Works development introduced North Adams to folks who are doing a housing development on Eagle Street. One of the big persistent challenges, and this is where the Renaissance gets really tricky, is in the area of housing. We did a study last year that says we have a shortage of housing at every income level, but also at the lower end of the affordable housing spectrum. And affordable housing is a really difficult term, and we've all really made the pivot to saying workforce housing as well, because it carries less of the stigma than affordable housing does. But if we want to attract people to live here, they have to be able to afford to live here, and we don't have the inventory for that in some income, at some income levels. And we're starting to see a level of housing investment that is comparable, or I would say comparable, but probably, I don't know, 7 to 10 years behind what other areas in the county are seeing. So people are investing and buying up properties at a level that limits availability to folks who can afford to live in the city, if they're not coming in with resources. The folks who are coming in out of town, second homeowner. The other side of that is that there's a developer who's really made a big play into purchasing kind of the inventory of a previous developer or owner or operator of rental housing, which is in the affordable band, and in some of the lower proportions of affordable housing. Whoa, I'm sliding.
You're there.
But is really interested in providing quality rental homes for folks who can afford to live here. But I also, in the last 3 or 4 months, had a lesson in how little any of this is understood. There was a school building that that the city owns, that we were looking to award to a developer to do affordable housing, and the stigma around the idea of affordable housing killed the project before it could get a fair hearing. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we closed on the sale of another city property. It's actually a city-held property, a former church and school. And the complaint is that the developer isn't going to be doing housing that's affordable to the people in the community. So there's a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't approach to housing, which is a big part of this.
So if I head out east up toward Greenfield, and I go through Florida and Savoy, I see on either side abandoned restaurants. It's like driving in northern New Hampshire, northern Maine. It says, I'm gone, I'm dead, there's nothing here, and nothing will ever replace it. That's outside your purview, I realize, but do you have a sense that those areas have no future, or is there something that can come in and bring new life?
Everything has a future, and you know, what's interesting is you look at some of the ideas for development, even you know, tourists, which is the reinvention of the classic mid-century motor lodge, and it's technology infused and it's nature focused, but it is taking a concept from the past and innovating on it. Yeah. And I think if you look at something like the Mohawk Trail, you know, it is going to be these, you know, boutique isn't the right concept, but it's going to be these experiences, these wayposts that become destinations in their own right, because people will suddenly discover that you can travel along Route 2 and find these, you know, charming little communities. But you know, it's a struggle in North Adams as well, as much as you know, I do believe in what you know, Mass MoCA has accomplished. The disconnect remains downtown development, and it's not a Mass MoCA problem exclusively, but the challenge is that until we can figure out the upper floors of these downtown buildings, which is to say commercial and residential business, you know, commercial businesses and residential units, then the ground level retail that would be interesting for the incumbent resident community, as well as an attraction for the visitors to Mass MoCA, and it needs to happen in that order to be sustainable. You know, we don't have the option of being a Cape destination where you can kind of roll down your shutters at a certain point in the year. So we do have to focus on that. You know, the day-to-day downtown living experience in a way that gives people a reason to invest, to live there, and then something to do when they're living there.
So just to sort of follow up on that a little bit, I used to look carefully. This is back in the mid to late 60s when I was going to school. And then from 95 to 2000, when my daughter was at Williams, and sort of see which factory was doing what. Sprague went away, but Sprague wasn't the original owner of those buildings. And places that you couldn't see from Route 2, like NORAD, of course, have been completely transformed. But I was trying to think of those factories. I don't know what they were, whether it was shoe or textile. As you leave downtown North Adams and you head up to the curve, are those functional in any way? Or maybe I can ask the question a different way. Of all of the factory buildings in North Adams and Adams, how many still stand vacant and unused?
Well, I can't really talk to the inventory for Adams, but let's do it. Let's do it the way you started to frame it. So if you come through downtown and you're heading up Route 2, there's a what's called the Windsor Mill, which is in a combination of private and city owned, and we probably are at, I don't know, 20-30% occupancy, and I might be high there on the Windsor Mill. Unfortunately, because a few years ago the city entered into an agreement with a developer, and they ended up backing out and getting cold feet, in part because of some 21E environmental findings that would have made the purchase tricky. And so we will have to do some remediation, or figure out a long-term lease, or there are ways to do that. But the developer, while he was looking forward, and this happens everywhere, but it's incredibly pernicious in North Adams, is when someone has been awarded a permission to enter into a purchase and sale with the city, but before they close on that, there have been situations where the prospective buyer goes around to the existing businesses and lets them know that once the sale closes and their lease terminates, they're no longer part of the vision for the space. And so that has a chilling effect on businesses. And in fact, we lost a really great business because they couldn't guarantee their federal suppliers that their space would be viable 2 years down the line. So they had to look for another tenant. So it's a great space. And so we have the opportunity to lease it, but we also, it's an old building, and it is suffering, as so many of these do, from deferred maintenance. And the question is, how much more money should the city put into it, or do we find a way to just get it into somebody else's hands?
Or knock it down?
Yeah, I don't want to knock it down. It's expensive to knock it down. It's expensive to knock it down, and then you just have an empty space, a known environmental issue, and you've spent dwindling public resources on a pile of bricks, literally a pile of bricks that nobody can do anything with.
Brick ovens.
There you go. You have the Eclipse Mill on one side of Route 2, which is artist live work housing, and so that's a great success story. On the other side of Route 2, you have what was most recently the shiitake mushroom, the Delft Tree Mushroom Building. The current owner experienced a roof collapse. This is going back almost 10 years at this point. And so basically you have a large mill space that is 4 walls with buttresses, because once the roof fell in, he stripped it for parts. He took the copper, he took the wood, and so you literally have a shell. Now for the right developer, that's a gold mine. Okay. Because you have what you want, which is the shell, which is architecturally sound, and you're going to build the thing out anyway, and it's probably cheaper to build the thing out from the stud up than it would be to knock through and build to suit.
So a quick confession: I talked to our fellow alum Mike Coakley, who's down there in Pittsfield. He says he's in touch with you, and one of the topics that you guys have is who gets to invite which new industry to which city. So I am, and he gave me a very interesting rundown of what's happening in Pittsfield. And for me, I'm from outside Boston. In fact, if you know where Route 2 intersects 128, I live about 2 miles from there. So 126 miles down the street to get there. So I would see a fair bit of that. And then I start thinking, the road used to go through Orange, and you have to go through Greenfield in the old days before that 91 north-south bypass came in. So you got to see a lot of things that were changing. But he's very happy to see industries like plastics, people doing software in Boston or in New York that are finding that they can get a lot more done here for a lot less money.
The value proposition of the Berkshires is unbelievable. The hard thing, it's not the hard thing. One of the challenging things is Mike and the city of Pittsfield have a pot of money available to them to provide incentives that I can't match. I don't have that same, and some of it's, GE settlement money, and they've put it to really good use for the community. So there's a clustering effect. There's an ability for Pittsfield, just Pittsfield as Pittsfield, not as an agent for connecting people to state incentives, although they certainly do that as well.
Mhm.
But to be more generous than North Adams can afford to be, without a similar pool of money.
So if I'm a company, I'm a software company, and I really like the environment. I like the whole culture. I'm attracted. I want to move out. Why would I choose Pittsfield over North Adams?
Because Pittsfield's going to give you a better deal than I can give you.
Oh, I see. Is this
Yeah.
tax related?
Yeah, tax related incentives, infrastructure build out. I mean, they have a red carpet team, and they really can roll out the red carpet and put some resources behind it.
Yeah.
Now, I can say that even with a higher commercial tax rate, you're going to pay less in North Adams. I'm going to say for the right person, it's a different, it's an environment and it's a community that may be more suitable, but that's going to come down to individual businesses, right? What kind of fit, what kind of culture is somebody looking for? We're both competing for the same resources, and Pittsfield as a bigger city, as a city that's closer to a transit route. They're closer to the Pike than we are, so their transportation challenges are a little less. But we both have successes to demonstrate.
So what would make the difference for North Adams? You mentioned the economic advantages that Pittsfield has with GE money. I didn't know anything about that. And I know they've seen some grants, and there's that brand new building. I forget
The Innovation
acronym.
Center, yeah.
Yeah. What would it take to get something like that going in North Adams?
$40 million.
That's all you need?
I think that was the number for the Innovation Center. I might be a little low, but I mean, give me $10 million in an account somewhere, and we can compete on the same level.
That isn't a lot of money in today's market.
Hmm?
That could be raised. I mean, my class, and I don't count myself high up on the list, for our 50th reunion gave $43 million to Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think what we're, and I was talking with someone the other day about this. The other thing that Pittsfield has as an advantage is a company called Milltown Capital, which has done a lot of investing in Pittsfield, and so the idea of a community investment fund is something that I know people are trying to launch for North Adams. So even if it weren't this pool of city funding, it's getting a talent pool of funders, and people have been incredibly generous. And a lot of it has been community building rather than capital or profit turning investments. So the question is, how do you take that same track record and turn it into something that supports business profitability?
Uh-huh. So there are instances I'm hearing, and I won't press for details unless you feel it's important to supply them, in which a company, an enterprise, has considered both North Adams and Pittsfield, and wound up choosing Pittsfield because they offer certain advantages that North Adams can't.
Yeah,
I got that. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And we have the same orientation toward business friendliness. We have the same resources of good team and a responsive staff. But at the end of the day, if you can, if you can look at your balance sheet and you're going to see an infusion of capital or, uh, you know, uh, incentives that Pittsfield can provide, it's a incredibly attractive set of inducements.
Yeah, but I think the location of North Adams, um, you know, well, I don't know. I talked to his Mike's wife, Wendy, whom
Wendy?
I know her
Yeah.
pretty well from working with the Career Center, which got our name tacked onto it. They twisted our arm. And she says there's a sort of a divide in terms of behavior. Like nobody from North Adams or Williamstown considers going to Lee. And I didn't know that Lee was in Berkshire County. I had to spend the night there one time. My car broke down. I was driving from Chicago, cold November night. It's a long story. It's kind of interesting, but I didn't think of Lee as there. And then, so you have this north-south county kind of division. Is that something that you observe and feel?
Yeah, I mean, so if you think about it, there's sort of three subdivisions within the Berkshires. There's what's called South County, which would be from kind of the Lennox line down, or maybe Lennox would say it starts in Lee or Stockbridge, I don't know. There's Central County, which would be Pittsfield, Dalton up, and then there's North County, North Adams, Williamstown, Clarksburg, Savoy. Oh, sorry. I'm just in a really bad place with this, trying to keep this thing
Don't
balanced.
worry. Yeah, my hope was, I mean, I can splice in a little bit of this for the website so folks
Yeah.
can partake of your wisdom. But
No, good Lord, no,
the
please.
genuine value for me is not having to take detailed notes. I'm
Yes.
left-handed, and I'm no longer a Williams student, so I have to grab the stuff.
Yeah.
But you look great now. Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer is, there is sort of this historical division, but it's in some ways it's breaking down, and in some ways it's calcifying, and my real preference is to see it break down in ways that remain equitable, right?
Mhm.
Because you really do have, although it's not an absolute economic, high income communities. There is greater wealth in the communities of South County than there is in many of the North County communities, except Williamstown. And Williamstown also does have economic challenges. I think we have to remember that. But we're really seeing greater collaboration and greater connection. But at the end of the day, there's still competition, right? A business that comes to North Adams, if it's a choice, there is a little bit of a binary, even if it's true that a business in the Berkshires is good for everyone in the Berkshires. I would rather see a new business in North Adams, because selfishly, it's good for our community. So it's really, how do we make sure that we are competitive?
Are there, Tom, are there instances where a company has chosen North Adams over Pittsfield?
Yeah, I mean, there are, and I think there's evidence of both of those things. I think that the folks who have looked at some of our mill redevelopment projects, they've looked all over the county, and North Adams is where they have settled. There was a company that was incubated at Lever, called UAT, United Aircraft Technologies, that we made a really strong pitch to keep in North Adams, and we got really close, and it did end up in Pittsfield. What we're seeing really in North Adams right now is smaller entrepreneurial businesses. So that's not to say that the competition and the opportunities to play at the level Pittsfield's playing at aren't there for us. they absolutely are. But we're also, I think, a little more nimble than some other places. And I really do apologize. I am coming up to time.
Okay, let's look at Williams and its relation to North Adams. Is there any contribution that you feel that's important? What about Krenz and his corridor? That going anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think of, Krenz and his corridor as a Williams initiative at this point specifically. They have a great operation in downtown North Adams. The I guess you call it the consulting business. But I haven't seen a lot of progress on the railroad museum project. I think there's a sense that if the money came through and the timing was right, they would like to move forward. But I haven't heard a lot of positive.
I haven't either. That's why I thought you'd have an inside track. So, Tom, you're saying goodbye to the His Honor's office, and what do you think your biggest legacy will be? What have you left behind that you're most proud of?
If
I
can
answer that via email, that's fine.
I'll take it real quick. I think if I can spend the next 6 months doing what I had really hoped to do during the previous 18, which was to focus on the fiscal foundation of the city and to tackle some kind of long-standing structural challenges that honestly the pandemic just didn't leave time and space for.
Didn't help anybody.
Then that's what I'll be proud of. I think, I don't think, or I am not yet at that point of reflectiveness to think in terms of legacy, but let me kind of ponder that one a little bit more. I think I maybe give you a little bit more of a thoughtful response in email than I have right now.
Well, we can do that. I know that you dealt extremely well with the challenges of COVID, and I know that from our previous conversations. Wouldn't you say that was an accomplishment that you could point to with pride?
Yeah, so a little bit of leading the witness there, but
yeah, it's a softball question.
I truly am proud of how this community weathered the challenges and the things that we struggled with. Fortunately, were economic, and that's important, and quality of life. But I look at places where the public health crisis was so much deeper, and I really am proud of what everyone in this community did to stay safe, to keep our numbers relatively low, and to get to a point where we could reopen. The governor, I'll leave with this. The governor has set Tuesday, the 15th, 12:01 a.m. as the date that his emergency orders under the Civil Defense Act expire. And so what I did today was I issued my own order to terminate the order that I issued on Friday, March 13th, to declare a state of emergency that we've operated under. Mm-hmm. Because once the state kind of goes back to a condition of normalcy with additional ability to use existing powers to manage, then we'll follow that. And so I was kind of joking when I handed it to city clerk, as I said, I don't know where you file this, I don't know what it needs to be, but here's these two bookend documents over a period of 15 months that at someday, when somebody's talking about the history of COVID in North Adams, somebody will look at that and go, oh, that's what he did. So there it is.
One very quick final question.
Sure.
What's happening to the structure of North Adams Hospital, to the actual physical, the buildings?
It's still operated as a satellite operation of Berkshire Health System. So the physical infrastructure they've invested in.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate catching up with you. Stay safe.
And you as well. We'll follow up with some email.
Sounds
Take
good.
care,
Take care.
Tom. Bye-bye.